Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today is April 30th, 2015, and we're very lucky once again to have do you usually go by the best Jesuit in the state or the worst Jesuit in the state? The only Jesuit in the state of Nevada, Father Max Oliva, who has been here, I think this is your fourth or fifth time.
Yeah,
fifth time. Father Max comes about every 8 weeks. Tries to come twice for every class. Everybody gets to see him twice. And we are focused on chapter 3 of this book, and then the second one is wisdom.
No. Honesty and integrity.
Honesty and integrity. We're going to talk about that today. So far this week, we started Monday learning about what? About the history of the Jesuits, and we started with St. Ignatius of Loyola. And then today, we went all the way to the present with Father Spitzer, talking about astrophysics.
Oh, good. That's my worst subject.
Okay, and we saw the rap video.
Who?
The rap video.
Oh, from Fairfield.
Yes.
That's good.
So we watched that too. And so I think everybody's ready to do this, and I hope people have questions to ask for this school. We're happy that we found out we have the highest placement rate in the state. 87% of people that complete the course here get employment. We're happy about that, and I think part of it is because we do the things we teach, or we learn, we help people learn the things you need to do to become a good employee and to have the skills. And I think the number one thing is honesty. If you are not trusted by your employer, there is no future there, if it's a good employer. Some places will hire anyone, but to have a stable, meaningful employment, you have to be trusted, and to be trusted in the long term, you have to be an honest person. And honesty is, I don't know if it's something you're born with or it's something that you learn.
Yeah, don't give my talk.
Okay, I'm not going to give, it's like the other day I was told, don't practice law. Okay, don't give the talk. But so honesty is the overriding theme of what we're going to do today, and I will turn it over to Father Max.
Thank you.
To proceed from here.
Thank you. Thank you. So you all know who I am, so I'd just like to know your first name and where you live, if it's Casa Grande or some other place.
Monica Henke, and I'm a resident of Casa Grande.
Okay.
I'm Dominic, and I also live at Casa Grande.
Okay.
Louis and Al.
Edward.
Moses, I used to live at Salvation Army and recently moved into my own house.
Excellent.
Robert, Salvation.
Billy, Las Vegas.
Gina, I live in Las Vegas.
Okay.
I live in Las Vegas.
Yes, I live
Back there.
Mike, I live in Las Vegas.
Tell us down at Casa Grande.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So, as Ed mentioned, I'm back for probably the fifth time. This is one of my favorite things to do here in the Valley. I do a lot of different kinds of work here, but I enjoy meeting you guys and women, and have some of the people who graduated became friends with, and so anyway, here I am. I want to take you on a bit of a journey back to childhood, which may have been happy, might have been difficult, looking at the good times and the bad times, the difficult times. I'm going to start you off by telling you a bit about my own story. And as I do that, I'd like to ask you to kind of reflect on your own. So first of all, my parents. My dad was Italian, full-blooded Italian from San Francisco, North Beach, blue-collar background, hardworking, and later in life as an adult, very successful in business. My mother was half Italian, half Irish, also from Northern California, from a wealthy background, but had a real compassion for people who are struggling, which is where I got my sense of compassion. In high school, my mother was my best friend. My father and I seemed to get along fine until I hit about 14. And then we seemed to kind of go in different directions and stayed in a kind of a difficult relationship for about 10 years. But eventually we managed to get together and become friends. Two key virtues that were important in our family: honesty and responsibility. Honesty I learned the hard way because I got caught, especially as a teenager, doing things that my parents did not want me to do. Got caught lying a few times, and got me into trouble and led to punishment. And since I don't like pain in any form, especially punishment, I learned to be honest. That was my big lesson there. I also learned, as Ed mentioned, the connection between honesty and trust. My dad explained that to me. My dad was a salesman, and he explained to me that, you know, if people suspect that you're not telling the truth, the trust level goes down, and then you have no relationship, especially if you're an employee-employer relationship. My dad also told me about don't exaggerate, you know, with your product. You want to sell your product, whatever it is, but just tell the truth about it, and people will listen. But if you exaggerate and get caught, then again, it's a trust thing. I think probably the moment that was most important for me as a young adult, I was in my mid-20s, was when I was working as a salesman myself for a food cannery in San Jose, California. And I was a young guy, had my own territory, Washington, Oregon, and Vancouver, and I used to go up on sales trips, had an expense account, which was great. And because of my background, because of my parents being so strong on honesty, when I would come back from the trip, I would sit down and I would itemize where I stayed and how much I spent, and then I would hand that into the company treasurer. Well, one day, one of the older salesmen came to my office and said, "We got to talk." And I said, "Sure. What's up?" "You're too honest." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "You know, you're too honest. You got to start being like us," which was not honest in terms they were padding their expense accounts, and which is a form of stealing because it's stealing money from your employer. So I had a moment of importance here in terms of my integrity and also in terms of courage. I had to think to myself, well, if I continue to go along the line that I've been taught, my own virtues, then I might lose this guy, and some other people here might lose their friendship. That's one of the possibilities, a risk that you take. But then I thought to myself, but if I don't stand true to my values, then I won't think well of myself. So I told the guy, well, this is the way I was raised, and I'm not changing. So you guys will have to adjust. So there was some tension around the office for a few weeks, but eventually things died down, and I was successful, and so they appreciated that, and eventually they got over their problem with me. And evidently they must have adjusted their own expense account, because otherwise there would be this big discrepancy with the treasurer. So I've asked myself, because of that experience and some other experiences I've had, I've asked myself over my lifetime 2 questions, which I'm asking you. First of all, why do people lie? That's the first question. And the second is, why do people steal? Which is both are against honesty. Now, I've asked that question before here, and I've had a number of really good responses to that. So I'll give you 2 from the lying and 2 from the stealing, and then I'm going to open it up to you. Why do we lie? One person said, to cover my tracks. All right, and secondly, I have a fear of rejection. Why do people steal? One person said envy, and another person said because I think I can get away with it. So let me ask you, and starting with Robert, why do you think people lie? Why do you think people steal?
Lying sometimes to kind of protect someone else's feelings, maybe. When people steal, they can get away with it. They think they can get away with it.
Okay. All right. Moses?
I think people lie to be accepted, and people still. I'm leaning towards envy. Why does he have that and not me? So start working for it. It's easier sometimes to steal.
Okay. Okay. Pass if you don't have anything to say. Okay.
Lie, probably. Right?
Makes what?
Lie, maybe sometimes to make themselves feel better.
To make them feel better about themselves, even though they're being dishonest? Hmm?
Even though it's a lie, feel better about themselves. Otherwise,
Aha. Okay.
probably steal monetary gain.
All right.
Sometimes I think it's because like they want something or they feel they need something, so it might be easy for them to just take it.
And what would you say about that person in terms of like conscience? Would they have a conscience?
Well, I'm sure they do. Everybody has a conscience, I believe.
But there's a good conscience, there's informed conscience, and there's bad conscience.
I think that they just don't think of the consequences at the time to do it. Or,
Okay.
Lie because of fear.
Fear.
I believe that people steal because they feel they have a lack in their lives.
Okay.
I feel like people lie so other people don't get hurt. And I feel sometimes you have to steal out of necessity if you're hungry. I don't know.
Okay. Lie to get away with something. All right.
Steal because lazy, rather not work for it.
Aha. Steal because they're lazy and would rather not work for it. Uh-huh. Okay. Obviously, this is not you.
No.
You're here. Yeah.
I think that people lie, well, in order to save others' feelings, and steal desperate for something.
Mm.
They're hungry, something, some sort of desperation.
Okay.
People lie probably because they think they can get away with it. See if anybody's going to catch them. They're lie, and then people feel like you said out of desperation. Because it's going to do something. And they don't have to.
Aha. Okay. All right.
I think you lie, like you said,
To be accepted?
yeah, to be accepted. But doing it's like anything else, the hustle, a way to get money. No, it's just like a job or
selling drugs. It's like that's how they
Sure.
pay for their house.
Right. Okay.
I think people lie out of fear. That's what happens. Same with other people around the building.
Okay. Probably not working. Although you could be working and still steal. Yeah. Okay. Back here.
People lie to look for personal gain.
Yeah. That's that sums it up pretty well. Yeah. Good. Good.
The reason I believe people lie and will steal is a better way.
That's true. That's true for some people. Yeah. Good point. Back there.
I think that people lie to justify because they're scared of the consequences. And I think people steal, some people steal because of the rush that gives them to feel that they have gotten away with something.
Ah. Okay. Ed.
Sure. But a lot of lie because they're afraid to tell the truth. This is the consequences of the truth.
Okay.
And steal because they want that thing and it's easier to just take it.
Of course, if you do that, you may end up living at Casa Grande, which is not the same as you know, living in a home somewhere or an apartment or a condo, yeah, of your own. Okay. All right. Very good. How many of you are familiar with the 12 steps? Most people. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the 12 steps in terms of honesty.
Are you talking about Alcoholics Anonymous?
AA, SA,
Okay.
drugs, whatever. Yeah. So it's interesting with the 12 steps because there's some of them are honesty with yourself, some are honesty with others, and some are honesty with God or however you understand the divine. So the first one is, as you may recall, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it is, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, so if you admit something like this, that's honesty with yourself, right? It's the opposite of denial, okay? Second one, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Well, that's actually about humility, but it's relation to a power greater. Third, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, which is also humility, but also trust. Trust that however you understand God will not desert you, but have mercy on you and help you. Number four, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. Big time honesty with self. That means looking at you know, good things I've done in my life and not good things I've done in my life. And actually looking at them, owning them, right? Not denying them, but honesty with self. Number five, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, there's honesty with other people, right? So not only am I owning in honesty with myself what I've done wrong, then I have to go and tell other people step 5. I have to tell other people what I've done, and that's honesty with and that takes a lot of courage. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Well, that's trust, but it's also owning that I have defects and need them removed. Number 7, humbly asked God to remove my shortcomings, honesty with myself, humility, trust. Number 8, made a list of all persons I had harmed. Again, there's honesty there, honesty with myself, honesty with how I've related to other people. Might be my parents, might be teachers, might be friends, whatever. Made a list of all persons and became willing to make amends to them all. However that works out in your life. Number 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admitted it. Again, that's honesty with yourself, and it means it's a continual thing, being honest with yourself. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry it out, which is, again, relationship to the higher power and courage. And finally, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, tried to carry the message to other people and to practice these principles in all my affairs. So all 12 steps have something to do with honesty, with responsibility, and with trust. So the next time you attend an AA meeting, be thinking about the steps in terms of honesty and integrity. Now, there is a connection, at least for me, in between honesty and integrity. And integrity is mentioned in the book on page 36, towards the bottom there. Integrity presupposes having a sense of self, a sense of self-worth. But self-worth is built on truth. And truth is built on honesty with yourself. Lying about yourself, misrepresenting who you are, really fractures integrity. It doesn't help it. So when going back to my own story, when I was in my mid-20s, even though I was working and things were going well in terms of my occupation with the cannery, salesman for the cannery, I realized that there were some things that were missing in my life. And I really didn't realize completely what was missing until I entered the Jesuits at the age of 24. Had a lot of free time, a lot of quiet time to kind of think about my life before I went into the Jesuits. Just as St. Ignatius of Loyola had time to think about what he had done during his convalescence from his injury. And I realized, as I reflected on my life, that my sense of self was out of balance. And thinking about that, I came up with some reasons why that was true. One, I had some guilt for past moral mistakes, which in Catholic terms we call sins. Secondly, I realized that I had measured my self-worth in the possessions I had rather than in something within myself. And thirdly, my father came into my reflection. I thought about him and how he was very kind of a patriarchal, somewhat domineering kind of father, and that's probably why I had a problem with them once I hit 14, because you're trying to build your own identity, and he's trying to squelch it. That I had some problems with my father, and that had led to kind of an inferiority complex, which was which I didn't realize really until I had this time to reflect on it. So I brought all this stuff to one of the older priests there, who were really very insightful and intuitive, and kind of a spiritual genius. And he said, so how is this manifesting itself here? And I said, well, every once in a while, I feel if somebody slights me, or I think they slight me, or somebody isn't kind to me, or whatever, then I start feeling bad about myself. And he said, okay, he said, I've got a little something for you. It's a phrase that you can say whenever you have these feelings. And he said, and let me kind of let you know that it will be at times when you say the phrase, it'll be more in your head than in your heart, but eventually things will connect, and you come and talk to me, and we'll look at it, talk about it, and I'll give you some other passages to think about. So I said, yeah, okay, good. What's the phrase? And he said, okay, every time you feel out of sorts with yourself, however this happens for you, just say, God loves me and nothing else matters. God loves me and nothing else matters. And okay, so I thought about that. I started saying that phrase whenever I felt these feelings. At first, I kind of made an act of the will or my mind said, yeah, okay, I can see this, but it wasn't in here, right? But I kept doing it, and eventually, at some point, it just kind of clicked, and I thought, yeah, this is true. Not only does God love me and nothing else matters, but that's the core of who I am. That's my integrity. That's what's going to hold together in the face of whatever temptations come up to go against my values and go against my virtue. God loves me and nothing else matters. Now, what is this? It's a personal, forgiving love, the same experience in a way that Ignatius had, but at a different era back in 400 years ago. But he also experienced that God's love and mercy. The interesting thing for both Ignatius and myself and anybody else who's had a conversion knows that that if you lived a certain way that wasn't good, and then all of a sudden you find yourself going through a change of life where you're heading in a better direction, a good direction, that somebody, however you understand that, if it's a divine or maybe it's one of your significant adults in your life, somebody has to say, look, I forgive and forget everything you did before now. Let's start anew and move forward. And that's kind of what I experienced. It was like all that I had done in the past that was not good was taken away, in the sense of I shouldn't worry about it, just start working on the good stuff now and head into the future. So standing for the truth instead of dishonesty demands a certain, some kind of core in yourself in order to stay true to that regardless of the situation. Now, I do think that I had that because that's what helped me at the cannery when that guy came in the office and said, you're too honest. I must have had some of that then, because I was able to say, tough, I'm going to stay the same, you'll have to change. There was a little bit of orneriness in me that got better as I matured and got more integrated with my personality. What I found over the years is that what's really important, to be honest, in order and not to fall into the fear of rejection or envy of what other people have, rather be satisfied with what you have and be grateful for that. That the core of integrity, based on God's love, enables me to face a variety of things, including fear. And I've had to face a number of fears over my lifetime. One, the fear of rejection, which other people have mentioned. I've been in a variety of situations that have been with physical danger. For example, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what's called the Troubles in Ireland, when the Catholics and the Protestants were fighting against each other, and there was a particular part of Belfast, the city where a lot of this happened, Belfast and Derry, where called the Falls Road, and I was in Ireland and I was in the north, and I wanted to take some photographs of the Falls Road. But in order to do that, I had to get permission from the IRA, which was the Catholic organization that was fighting against the Protestants. I had to get permission from them to walk down Falls Road, number one, and number two, to take pictures. But it was a little dangerous at that time to do that. So, but they assured me that they'd put the word out that I was going to be on the road and that they would take care of me. And so I managed to do it. But I had a fair amount of fear there of rejection, of physical injury. The other fear that I have experienced in talking to people in this class and others is a fear of the ordinariness of life. And because once you get, there's certain things that happen in your life that are exciting, and there's a rush there, but most of your life is just, one day at a time, and to be at peace with that is really important, it seems to me, especially in relation to the whole area of drugs. I find that that this integrity, this sense of self, however you base it, enables me also to have moral courage, which is the courage of my convictions, the courage of what I believe in. Ability to say no to anything or anyone who wishes me harm, to face whatever addiction I might have, and with humility get the help I need to overcome it. That's all part of this integrity and honesty with self. Integrity means wholeness and completeness. It means often being authentic, having a sense of self-respect. And once I get to that point, and am in that point for a period of time, then I can help others, but not until then. So integrity, honesty, trust is my comments at the beginning. Anything that you want to say about anything I've said from your own experience or something you've heard or whatever?
Well, honesty and trust does pay off. I've been practicing that, and it may not have any value money-wise, kind of does at the middle of the road.
Okay, so there is value in it, even though there might not be a monetary value. Although it may be a monetary value, because if you're trusted, you're going to get a good job and you're going to get paid.
It works out in many levels.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Little late.
I'm not sure how this would apply, but I moved here from another state.
Yeah.
And it seems as if those things are lacking as far as speed.
Oh. Yes. You got to be real. You got to have a real strong core in this town. Yeah. Yeah. Did you come from the Midwest?
No, I came from Southern California.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why you have to work on yourself and your own core.
Mm-hmm. As a culture shock at first, you know, when you move from another state, you have different roommates, people you're exposed to that maybe you weren't before, and everyone has some type of hustle or honest something that they'd like to involve you with.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful of people who manipulate. Be careful with manipulators. Yeah. And also be careful with the need to be liked. Okay. Well, because if you have a strong need to be liked, then you'll do things that this person wants you to do, even though this little voice says, I don't think this is a good idea.
I have a
Good. Good. All right. Excellent. Yeah. Yes. Man with who's missing something on top of his head.
I don't see anything.
I like the part that you said that God loves me and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Me and my daughter, we always have this little saying, you know, like we're wondering about things. She always says, "What would you?"
Ah, what would Jesus do?
It
Yeah.
reminds me of that.
Yeah, that's right. That'll get you too if she's saying that to you.
Yeah.
That's a good person to have in your life. Yeah, very good. Excellent. Being an honest girl, she is. Excellent. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Robert. You were saying something about.
Oh no, I was saying there's nothing missing there.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well, now one of the people that I've come across in my life in the last few years is a fellow named Hank Shea, and I'm going to take you into a little different scene in terms of crime. Hank Shea is a former federal prosecutor of white-collar criminals, and he learned by in the prosecution of them, and he learned a lot about their lifestyle and what made them tick and what made them take the wrong path. And in fact, he became friends with some of them, and he used to team up with them. Would take them with him, and when he was giving speeches, and they would tell the audience, you know, what they did wrong and what you shouldn't do in order to stay on the right track. So he came up with what he called 10 lessons, top 10 lessons learned from white-collar criminals. And I'd like to go through these 10 because they're connected to the virtues of honesty, integrity, and courage. And wisdom. Wisdom is important here too. He starts number 10 and works down to number 1. So number 10, and you can, we all have probably struggled with this at times. When faced with a right versus a wrong decision, guard against that first intentional misstep. So you're given a choice of something is good to do or something not good to do, and sometimes you just slip into it without thinking. But the intentional, when you first make that, guarding against that the temptation to make an intentional step in the wrong direction, morally speaking. Okay? Secondly, never knowingly sign a false document. So if you have a hint in what the employer wants you to sign, or somebody else wants you to sign, and you have the sense that this may not be right, my advice would be to get some advice from somebody else who you trust, and then don't sign the document, whatever it is. Okay? Number 8, never compound or try to bury your mistakes. Because, for one thing, because we learn from our mistakes. You know, failure is an important part of life because that's how you learn. So, but politicians are great at this. Burying their mistakes seems to be part of some of them, part of their DNA. So never compound or try to bury your mistakes. Own up to them, which is honesty, and learn from them. Number 7, do not follow directions from others you believe to be improper or unethical. Now, sometimes that actually happens in a business. I remember a friend of mine from San Diego told me about when he was in high school, he worked for his uncle in a company that made some kind of doors. And so one day his uncle, who he looked up to, asked him to do something related to the product that was untrue, but not to worry about. Don't worry about that. Just do what I'm telling you. I'm your uncle. Do what I'm telling you. This is how we do it here. And he finally said to himself, "There's something wrong with this. I don't agree with this. This is something dishonest about this, and now you run a risk here, of course." And the risk was, which he ran, you might lose the job. And his uncle finally told him, "I don't think you should be working here." And he said, "Fine, I'm out of here." He left and got a job somewhere else. So do not follow directions from others, no matter how important they are, if you believe them to be improper or unethical. Number 6, no matter what your position in your organization, whether you're a cook, a janitor, a waitress, a supervisor, whatever you are, lead by example. Because other people are watching, and other people learn from you, and other people either become better persons because of you, or not good persons because of you. So lead by example. Number 5, avoid the perils of willful blindness, where you know something's going on. Now, sometimes you have to do that for safety's sake. If you know something's going on over here that you know is, no, this is not right. Sometimes you can talk to your supervisor about it, but you have to kind of make a judgment on that, whether, is this going to help solve the situation. Can't put yourself in jeopardy. But the problem is, and in some cases, if you do not report what you're seeing, you're considered part of the problem. I believe the police look at it that way, right? If you're driving the car of the guy who just robbed the bank, you're just as responsible as he is for whatever happened in the bank, even though you weren't in the bank. Avoid the perils of willful blindness. Lesson number 4, when faced with an ethical dilemma, seek advice and counsel from others. So when you've got a situation where you're not sure what's right and what's wrong here, then get advice from somebody you trust. That could be a pastor, it could be a coach, it could be an adult who you just find is helpful and you trust. But when faced with an ethical dilemma, rather than just going on your own without getting advice, it's important to get some kind of input. Number 3, learn to be satisfied with what you have legitimately earned. Greed is a vicious vice that can destroy you. Yeah, very important. And people mention, you know, there's a connection between envy and greed. So be careful with, you know, even though you may not be making as much money as you thought you should be at this time of your life, or even if you're not making as much money as somebody else you know is making, learn to be satisfied with what you have legitimately earned. Number 2, no one is above the law. This is a core principle. No matter how powerful, wealthy, or famous one becomes, everyone is still subject to the same laws that govern everybody and enable us to live in a civilized society. Now, I don't think you're involved in this in terms of no one is above the law, but sometimes you see people who are in very successful sport, might be sports figure, might be a politician, might be a business person, whatever, who has gotten to the point erroneously in their own mind that they're better than everybody else, that they're superior to, that this law does not apply to them. So if you ever get to that point, remember that. No one is above the law. Number 1, lesson number 1, above all else, at all times, wherever you live or work, do 3 things. Act with and foster integrity, exhibit and reward courage, and honor and protect your reputation and your organization's reputation. So, 10 lessons learned from white-collar criminals. Yeah?
Can you repeat that last
one? Yes. Above all else, wherever you live or work, do 3 things. Act with and foster integrity, exhibit and reward courage, and honor and protect your reputation and your organization's reputation. Your reputation is really important. You know, if your reputation is you're a hardworking, good person, honest, that's good. If your reputation is that you can't be trusted, you're not going to get hired. At that note, let's take a break for a little coffee and whatever else, juice or whatever.
To the school. Well, I'm gonna see if we can